Hello and welcome, Thunder Wizards. This is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. I am doing a live stream. However, in my new place, the upload speed is very slow. So we're just going to have a little slideshow while I rant on and I talk. So in this video, today I am going to be sharing with you what it means to shift into 5D. And what is happening with me. I can tell you that there is a definite shift going on. In fact, I have been underreporting the severity of the shift, and my guides have told me that it would be beneficial if I shared with you in more detail some of my experiences and where I think we're headed with this. And the whole point of this is to help you. This is the reason I've been hesitant to share, because I'm not interested in sounding like I'm bragging about myself. I'm interested in helping other people. And so I was told that one of the ways to help other people understand what's going on is to share what's happening with you and to share with them specifically some of the things you're doing to achieve that. So I have come to the conclusion that I am in the first stages of shifting to 5D. I can tell you that I am living in multiple dimensions. And the truth is, this has always been the case for everybody, including you. The truth is that you live in dimensions going all the way up to however many dimensions there are in this universe, 11, let's just say. You live in 11 dimensions. And just at the 5th dimensional level, you are a deity. So you already exist in that state. There is a version of you that is watching this kind of like you would watch if you were playing a virtual reality video game. And so the difference would be you as the video game avatar, you are totally immersed in the experience, and you happen to believe that everything you're experiencing is complete reality. However, it's not the case. So the shift to 5D is really nothing more than awakening to the reality that you are in a video game. And so we need to get over, and again, in all video games you have the scenario where you have to win a level to level up. You have to, solve the puzzle or beat the monster or something like that. And this is how we have it in 3D. And this has to do with religion as well. Our religions in 3D are set up so that we have to accomplish something. We have to achieve enlightenment or achieve salvation or something like that. In other words, you're not there. There's something incomplete, or in the case of Western religions, you're faulty and you have to be saved or fixed, or in the case of the Eastern religions, you have to accomplish, achieving it. And I really want to get into specifics, bad mouthing other teachers and things like that, but I'm gonna work to not do that today. So the 5D shift is here. And what is happening, as you know, this is just a little bit of a recap. What is happening is that we are in fact experiencing what is called the solar flash. I actually was told that it's a wave. That's what the higher dimensional beings told me. I had never heard of the solar flash. I didn't even believe 9 months ago. I did not even believe in higher dimensional beings in the sense that I do now. I believed in ascended masters and deities and things like that, but to actually be able to interact and communicate back and forth with a higher dimensional being, it's not that I disbelieved it. I just didn't think that's what happened in 3D. I just didn't think it was possible. So many things have completely changed for me over these past 9 months, and I'm not only, my beliefs have changed, but bear in mind, my beliefs have always been based on my experience. I have never in my life, not once, except early on as a child and the first couple years of adulthood, I never just believed anything at face value. In fact, the reason I left born-again Christianity was because of that very reason. I simply could not back up with my real life interaction with the world what I was being taught, and so I dropped it. And I dropped it because I found that deity was, with the words I would use now, a narcissistic psychopath. And even if that being was the be-all and end-all, I wasn't going to worship him because he didn't deserve it. And if that meant I went to hell, I was prepared to go to hell for the rest of my existence. Looking back on it, it was one of the bravest things I ever did, and it was just another way of dying to myself. But in any case, we are all living and existing on higher dimensional levels, and the being that you are in the fifth dimension and above has nothing to do with your avatar in the exact same way. If you were playing a video game and you had chosen an avatar, let's say you were playing, I don't even know, Dungeons and Dragons, I don't even know what the hell. Let's say Dungeons and Dragons, and you've chosen the avatar as the warrior shaman. And so as the player of the game, you have as much connection to that avatar as your higher self does to the human that you are playing out in this life right now. And what has happened because of the solar flash that started in January 2nd, or was it December 2nd? I can't remember which now. I think December 2nd. Starting December 2nd of 2022, the first solar wave hit. As I said, I didn't believe in this. I didn't even know it existed. I had a shamanic dream, and higher dimensional beings showed me that there was going to be a worldwide event that was going to be seen in the sky. Everybody would feel it. They would think it was the second coming of Jesus, and then they would immediately realize it was something beyond that, and people would have an instant awakening, and they would, drop all of their false beliefs, including very religious people. If my dream is literal, then it means that in a flash, extremely religious people are going to go, "Oh my God, that religion is nonsense." And they're going to realize that spirituality is far greater and more expansive and real than they ever imagined. They'll realize they've bought into a lie, and the real thing is even more amazing and more wonderful than anything that their religion could have made up for them. And if that is true, that will happen. And so I didn't know anything about the solar flash or the event or any of that stuff. I completely was either unaware of it or didn't believe in it, or thought it was any of that stuff. I thought maybe was symbolic at best. And so after that dream, I asked these higher dimensional beings, I said, what is going to happen? What is this event going to be? Is it going to be that spaceships, like fleets of spaceships, are going to fill the sky, and then people will have that's kind of what I wanted to happen. And the response was no. There's going to be a series of solar waves of love that will hit the earth and transform. It will go entirely through the entire earth and will transform every living being on it. And at that point, I said to myself, all right, I'm just making this up. This is just so new agey. This is just a bunch of nonsense. Now, what I've learned to do with these higher dimensional beings that I interact with now, and I have been every single day for 9 months, what I do is when they tell me something, I take it at face value. Bear in mind, they communicate through, unless they're giving me some kind of shamanic lucid dream. Their communication is telepathic and energetic. So, including right now, as I sit here talking to you, I am being flooded with these intense waves of energy that I never felt before. Even my, entire 30-year, practice and teaching of extremely high-level qigong and energy work, I've never felt the kind of energy that is flowing through my heart chakra right now. If I'm being honest, maybe once or twice in my entire, practice. And so that is happening to me almost 24/7. I usually will have a few hours every day where there might not be any energies going through me, or I won't be aware of it because I'm out surfing or something like that, and I'm so connected to my physical body that I'm not, focusing on that. But the rest of the time, every single day, I am feeling these higher dimensional energies, which I've come to believe are electromagnetic in nature from a higher dimension. So they're either communicating to me through telepathically, and or they are communicating to me through these energy waves, which seem to go beyond my human intellect and are going straight into my spirit or into my body. And I get the sense that I'm being communicated to, but it's going beyond my human mind. So I kind of go, I don't know what that means. I don't know what's happening. A lot of it is I'm just being shifted. I'm just continuously going through these energy shifts and upgrades as if I'm being plugged into some kind of, vibrating higher dimensional energy source. So I've just gotten used to it. I just go through my day and it just comes and goes. But what's really happening when I am living in multiple dimensions is what's really completely blowing my mind. And I haven't shared the majority of it because it just sounds too unbelievable. And it sounds like I'm bragging, and I have no interest in that. I have no interest in anything other than empowering and inspiring people. I have no interest in being a cult leader. I have no interest in any of that. I, in fact, have difficulty with, the students that I have sometimes that, when you have a strong relationship with a teacher and you learn a lot, it's very easy to make them a symbol for your higher self. And I've come to accept that that's part of the student-teacher relationship, and so I don't mess with that. But it's not an easy experience for me because I know who I am, and I know that my 3D experience is that I'm as human as they come. I have never understood teachers who present themselves as, enlightened or gods or God on earth. I've never understood that. And whenever a teacher has presented themselves that way, my first response is, then what good are you to me? Because I'm not perfect. I'm a human being, struggling and learning and growing. What you're presenting to me is completely unusable to me. So I'm not interested in anything you have to say because you can't teach me anything. And so I want to make sure that I do that. And my entire focus is teaching people how to, what to do, what I'm doing and what I've done. And that's why if you go back in time, you will see me on my channel being extremely human. If you spend any time on my channel, you'll see that over the past few years, I've made numerous videos entitled I Was Wrong About. And I will tell people, how I was wrong about certain things and how I've changed. There are times when I've been in bad moods and I've been cranky and I've done and said things that I'm embarrassed of now, but I don't delete those videos for one good reason. I want you to know that I'm just like you are. So that means that what I'm going to share with you in this video, I'm assuming is true for you. Now, I'm not here saying it is true for you because I don't know what is true for you. I want to say my false humility wants to say you are exactly like me, but you're probably not. You're probably your own individual person. But whatever you are infinite in scope. Even if you are a different expression of that infinity than I am. So I'm leading myself up to be able to share with you some of the stuff that is just beyond belief. So to understand, when I say I live in multiple dimensions, what it means is that on a daily basis, I do what is called interdimensional meditation. And interdimensional meditation you can find on my website. I'm trying to find something that'll show it. I don't see it here. But interdimensional meditation course you can find at thunderwizard.com, and you can subscribe to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong or the interdimensional meditation. I recommend Lightning Qigong because it's $1 more and you get a zillion more stuff by doing that. But you can also do the guided free interdimensional meditations on this channel. If you just spend a little time looking for them, you can find them. You all don't have to do it my way either. You can do CE5. And CE5 is Dr. Stephen Greer's protocol, which is what got me, which really was got me into this experience where I've had this absolute, total, complete, utter shift that began in June of 2022. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Even though I have a different focus than his protocol is, it's the same thing. So the CE5 protocol, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocol, also called Human Initiated Contact, is simply where you meditate, you imagine yourself leaving your body and you imagine yourself going out into space. And it's really just that simple. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just do your best and you imagine it. And then out in space, you ask if there are any higher dimensional beings, perhaps from other dimensions or from other galaxies. Would they like to interact with you? Would they like to come and visit you? And then if you're lucky, you may have an experience. You may feel something. You may have a vision, or you might feel something, or you might sort of go into a little fantasy, and you might feel like you're having this little fantasy about seeing a ball of light or seeing some being. And regardless of how intense or boring it is, or even if it's non-existent, this is also the case. All you have to do is just simply send out that invitation, and you have to be very clear that you are choosing to interact with a higher dimensional being, perhaps from another galaxy. And then you imagine yourself flying back to your house. So your energy body, you imagine yourself flying back into Earth's orbit and flying back to your home and going through your roof and back into your body. And you imagine a picture of yourself, how you are. Now, if you're doing CE5 and you're really serious about it, you'll have your video camera set up and you'll have your radio set up. And you'll probably be out looking at the sky. So I did that. I did that 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I was actually successful all 3 times, but I wasn't able to accept it because it just seemed like my mind was creating a fantasy. And I was also, turns out I was very blocked from the experience internally. So I had my radio with me, and if you go and watch the video, how I became an extraterrestrial, you can see what I went through and what happened. You can see some of the stuff I caught on video and some of the stuff I caught on audio, and you'll see that they proved to me that they weren't my imagination, that they really existed. And that frightened me so much. And it began an experience where I completely was transformed. And it was a very challenging experience, but all shamanic initiations are, and that's what this was. And I was told, you are going to be initiated into a connection with us. And it was a beautiful experience, except for the fact that I was very attached to my literal understanding of 3D, which completely, totally had to be dismantled. And that was very challenging to me. But from that moment on, what I started doing was I no longer cared about seeing balls of light. And I learned that they weren't really all that interested in showing me balls of light. They were interested in interacting with me. Now, when I first heard about this and I watched the movie Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I felt guilty because once I saw in that movie, and you can look at that on YouTube, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, it's free. You can watch that, and then you'll know how to do it. But once I saw that, I felt guilty because I said, I don't care about seeing ships in the sky. I want these beings to teach me esoteric spiritual power. I wanted to learn how to be like they are. I wanted to have their spiritual abilities and their powers, and I felt guilty about that. But as it turns out, that's exactly what they had in mind for me, and they told me that from the very beginning. And it was a crash course, and I don't think most people go through it as rapidly as I did. I don't know. It could have been because they met me at my desire, because that was my desire. And so long story short is that then from then on, I started doing what I call interdimensional meditation, which is I simply lie down, I close my eyes, and I do that same protocol where I leave my body and I go out into outer space, and I simply come back to my, wherever I am, lying down in my room or wherever, and I wait for them to show up. And they did. And it was, again, interesting and wonderful and powerful and challenging to my understanding of reality. And what started to happen was I started getting, sorry, I'm being distracted because I think there's somebody walking on my roof because the roof needs to be repaired. Yeah, oh no, it's the Amazon guy. So just give me a second here as he's taking a picture of, he doesn't see that I'm right here. He's going to turn around. He's going back down the stairs. Okay. So that's actually kind of a good example of what it's like to do CE5. You're sitting around with your camera, taking pictures, waiting, looking, but I'm sitting there actually behind the window looking at you. He could have just turned and looked at me and saw me. But in any case, what happened was that I started being taken into other dimensions. The first thing that started happening was I couldn't understand what was happening, and it was causing me emotional and physical trauma. Not the energy, just my reaction to it. I was causing myself problems because I couldn't accept it. And I took some time off, and then one day I saw out of the corner of my eye this enormous red, electric red, ruby red ball of light. It had to have been the size of a 747. and it started descending out of the clouds. And I went, what the F is that? And I ran to the window and it vanished. And I knew what it was. I had been avoiding doing the meditation, and it was my higher dimensional friend inviting himself, would you like to meditate? So I invited him in, his energy came into the room, and I started going into a deep trance, and I started finding myself chanting seed sound mantras. And this is where the huar breath came from. It came from that experience. And I started chanting runes, and he started teaching me how to chant runes specifically. And it was a very empowering experience. And I started realizing that the ascended masters, the teachers of all true spiritual religions, have always been what we consider to be extraterrestrials, which are, by the way, completely different from aliens. Aliens who abduct are not the same as extraterrestrials. I'm not going to take the time to talk about it, but forget everything you've heard about about aliens and abductions and all of the beings associated with that. Forget about those. They have nothing to do with ETs. That is purely a terrestrial phenomenon. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. But in terms of the teachers of humanity have always been these beings. And because we are in this three-dimensional video game, part of the rules of that is that when you're in the 3D game, you can't fully understand the nature of different dimensions, because if you did, the game would stop. And so until this point in history, these beings, which we perceive as angels, as elves, as ascended masters, as gods, as demigods, these beings have been masquerading or have been hiding their true identity so that we don't flip out and end up, spontaneously leaving the 3D game that we chose to be in. But now that's all changed. And these are people who have souls just like you. They are identical. This is why they're not alien. Aliens are psychopathic, sociopathic beings who don't understand you and have to abduct you and experiment on you and implant you and traumatize you and abuse you in all these ways. That's an alien. An ET is a soul exactly like yours, but it happens to be on a different dimension. It could be a being that doesn't have a physical body. It could be a being that is a soul that even could have been, let's say, a human being who achieved a level of enlightenment and then no longer needed to be on Earth, and then decided to reincarnate in a higher level. But in order to do that, to live in a higher dimension, they needed a different physical body that would allow them to have a different experience on a fifth dimension or a sixth dimensional level. And that's not what Earth is. Earth is a three-dimensional place. So if you want to reincarnate on a higher level, you're going to have to go to a different planet that's functioning and vibrating at a higher level, which means you will have the body of whatever life forms have evolved. So this is really what we would call an extraterrestrial. And so the difference between them and us is that we identify with our primate bodies. And anything that's not a human being primate, we don't relate to. That's because we live in 3D. But once you get out of 3D, you don't relate to yourself based on the suit that you're wearing. You relate to yourself based on your soul essence. And you also relate to all other beings based on their soul essence. So just like if I'm out in public and I meet somebody, when I had hair, my hair was black. I had black hair and green eyes. I still have green eyes. And if I go outside and I run into somebody who has red hair and blue eyes, I don't go, oh my God, you're a different creature from me. No, it's just a human being that has some slight differences, but it's exactly like me. And that's what it's like for them. They may have the body of an insect. They may have the body of a strange looking humanoid. They may have a body that you can't even relate to. They may have a physical body that is frightening to you. But they don't see you as a primate. They see you as a soul. And they see every other being in the universe as a soul. And you will do the same once you shift up to 5D. If you were to die right now and leave your physical 3D body, and after you went through the transformation process of getting used to that, you would then see everything else in the same way. This is nothing new. This is why this isn't some kind of a spiritual awakening where you have to achieve some kind of spiritual enlightenment. It has nothing to do with that. It's simply awakening to who you are. All right, so I'm still avoiding telling you what has happened. So let me get to it. So after those first, I want to say a month, maybe 2 months, of me getting used to the fact that reality is not at all what I thought, I became aware of the Mandela Effect, and I let go of my understanding of literal reality. I started becoming more interested in quantum physics and quantum mechanics and the manifestation of reality, and how even from a physicist perspective, that physical reality is really just a temporary 3D projection from a higher dimension. I mean, all physicists know this, but it doesn't mean anything to the average person. That was starting to become my reality, and I was getting more and more comfortable with that. And then one day, that same being showed up energetically. It was in the afternoon, and I'll never forget it. I was lying on the couch watching Netflix, and in the room came this being, and the power was immense, and this telepathic message combined with this incredibly blissful but very powerful higher dimensional energy came into my heart chakra and came into my brain, and the being said, "You are a probability." Now, bear in mind, this is my own mind, exploding with this thought, and it's coming from somewhere else. It was coming from above me and to the right. It was like being broadcast into my brain with this very powerful telepathic energy. And I said, "You mean physics says that anything is possible? So I'm one of these infinite possibilities." And the being repeated, "You are a probability." Very powerful. And if there was a sound to it, it would have been, it was so undeniable that this was coming from another being in another dimension, and it carried with it a feeling. So it wasn't just the words that were popping up in my head, it was the feeling. And the energy was actually shifting me. Every time that the message came, my essence would shift. I would sort of phase out of existence. It was that kind of a feeling. And that went on for a little while, me responding back in my limited understanding, trying to ask a question or trying to clarify, and the same message, "You are a probability." Until my brain started to break, because it's more than just the words, it's the feeling and the concept. It was a higher dimensional concept that was more powerful than my 3D essence, and so it would expand me on a level that felt like I was dying, but it was also blissful, and it was also amazing, but it was also confusing. It was all these things all at once. And then the being, left. Apparently I had received about as much as I could handle and stay coherent, physically coherent, and it left, and I was left with that, and I had to meditate on that. And I share about that in my book, Extraterrestrials Are Coming to Earth, and which you can find on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. You can also go to audiobooks.thunderwizard.com and find it there. Click on the US link if you're outside of the US. And so you are a probability was said to me. Now, there was more that was said to me, which my false humility is having difficulty sharing with you, because it's still hard to comprehend, and I've been experiencing it even more and more and more. And this is why I say I'm living in multiple dimensions, and who I am in higher dimensions is not who I am in 3D. So if you interact with me physically or online and you're talking to me, Mahadeva, the three-dimensional human, you are not seeing who I truly am. And I can only assume that's true for you. Now, the reason I say I can only assume that's true for you is because one of the things I've learned about interdimensional beings is that they seem to only communicate to 3D humans about who they are. So if you ever, by the way, just for the record, I do not believe that anybody can channel extraterrestrials. I don't believe that's how it works. I'm open to being wrong about that, and I don't have an ego about it, but I'm just telling you because of the kinds of messages that they give, that's just not consistent with the experience that I've had. Nor is it consistent with the experience of my students who have been doing the interdimensional meditations and have been having the same kinds of experiences I have. When a higher dimensional being reaches out to you, they are only interested in expanding your experience of yourself. They have no interest in giving you general messages about the world, or they're not trying to turn you into a prophet or anything like that. They give you the experience that you are the entire universe. And so they're only interested in saying you are this, you are that. Now that is contrary, that goes against our understanding of spirituality, because we're taught, understandably, that we should humble ourselves and not be narcissists. But the truth of the matter is that narcissists are liars. Narcissists say that they are God, they say that they are the most important, the best at this, the best at that. But the truth is they're lying to you. They actually are so filled with self-hatred and shame and lack of self-confidence that the only way they can survive is by counterbalancing that with a falsehood, which is they say the exact opposite of what they feel, because they feel, and the truth is if they were to fully feel the level of shame and self-hatred and lack of self-confidence, it could kill them. So it sounds very narcissistic when you're having a telepathic communication, which is coming from inside of your own mind, you think, but you can feel it coming from another being. And you are being told that you are God. Something like that. You'll be told something like that, and it's very, very hard to accept. In fact, it's traumatizing. That's been my experience. So a narcissist doesn't believe that they're anything. So it's completely contrary to the 3D message that we're told, which is you prostrate yourself, you humble yourself, you become nothing. There's a lot of people, whether it's religion or even if it's New Age spirituality, people will try and present themselves. They'll virtue signal by saying, "Oh, I'm nothing. I've gotten rid of my ego," and it's all bullshit. It's just the complete opposite of what these higher dimensional beings will tell you. Because in higher dimensions, there's no place for false humility. False humility works in the third dimension because it gives us a way to be part of a group and to interact, because we live in this delusion of isolation. But when you are connected to everything, which is what you are on higher levels, you don't have to play this game with yourself, and you don't have to play this game with other people. So when you're on that level, you can actually be the most powerful being in existence. And at the same time, that is actually the epitome of humility. Because so is everybody else. You are everybody else, and everybody else is you. And so it becomes a balancing act in the third dimension, because to keep that awareness in your mind while living in this three-dimensional video game becomes very confusing. And so the shift to 5D, now get out your pen and papers and write this down. The shift to 5D is learning how to expand beyond your limited ego while still walking around in your physical primate body. Should I repeat that? The shift to 5D consists of you getting rid of your false humility and expanding beyond your 3D ego while still walking around in your 3D body. This is something that has never happened in the history of the human race. What has happened up until this point is that when people go beyond their 3D ego, their body dies. And then, you hear this from people who have had near-death experiences. I've had something that could be classified as that, so I understand that. But for people who haven't gone through anything like that, up until this point in history, in order to expand beyond your 3D avatar, you have to die. So now you get to do that while still having a three-dimensional body. And as I'm saying that, I'm getting a confirmation energetically. So I'm onto something here. And again, I'm not channeling. I'm not a channeler. Everything that you're hearing me say is me doing my best to explain in three-dimensional terms my experience. So let's continue here. I have to gather my thoughts here for a second. I'm getting distracted. Because every now and then my ego jumps in and says, what the hell are you about to say? What did you just say? So I was told, as I told you in the beginning, you are a probability. Then the messages started getting more intense. Let me back up a little bit before that. Before that, one day I was lying on my couch and I was watching Netflix, and again, coming down from the top right-hand side of, above me, this energy comes into the room. And there was multiple beings I sensed. And they started, and I'm going to get emotional, but they started telling me how much they loved me. And so it was just this chorus of beings saying, we love you so much, so much. You're our favorite person. You're the best one of all. You're our favorite person to be around. You are such an amazing, wonderful, it's like, kind of the way that maybe a mother, a really loving mother talks to a child, or, how we talk to, little kids or something like that. It was just over the top, but very honest and very real, and completely raw and vulnerable. And it was very hard, you know, and I'm sure I did. I broke down into tears multiple times. And these waves of higher dimensional love are flowing through me as this message is coming to me. Then, similar messages of, you have no idea how important you are. You are so important to us. You are so important to the world. You are so important. So then there was a period of time where that was just being drilled into me. And again, this is challenging to hear. I know it doesn't sound that way, but when you feel the emotions, the higher dimensional emotions behind it, it's very challenging to listen to. It destroys your 3D protection mechanisms, and allowing yourself to be loved on the deepest soul level by beings that know you more deeply than you've ever been known is it just destroys all of your emotional armor. So those messages went on for I don't know how long. And then I started getting, one day and I'm going to share this because I wrote it in my book, and I wrote it in my book not because I was trying to brag. To be honest, I didn't want to write this in the book because my false humility says, what are people going to think? They're going to think you're a narcissist. I also don't want people to get the wrong understanding about this. And I also don't completely know what it all means. I'm still digesting it, and if I'm being honest, I'm still struggling with it. Because we are all different, and each one of us has a different purpose and a different path. And so I may have a specific path that may sound very grandiose, and that's challenging to my false humility. But then the being showed up again. That same very powerful being. Same thing. I was lying. I don't know what it was about, watching Netflix in the afternoon, that was the best time for them to show up, but that's when they'd show up. Probably because I was fully in my conscious mind. I think that's it. They were addressing my conscious mind. Because if you have a dream, or if you have a vision, or if you have a shamanic journey, you can come back and kind of go, hey man, that was really trippy. But when it's actually happening to you, that's a whole other thing. So the being shows up and it says, you are Shiva incarnate. And I responded with New Age spirituality. And I said, yes, of course, we are all Shiva. And the being said, no, very powerfully. You are Shiva incarnate. And it kept going, and I was like, I couldn't minimize it or talk myself out of it. And I started to realize that I was talking to a teacher. And when I talk to students, it's very important that they listen to what I say. And even if they have difficulty accepting it, I will chastise them if they give me false humility or minimize it. I'll say, you need to listen to what I'm telling you. You need to accept this. If you want to be my student, you have to learn how to accept what I'm teaching you. And so I knew that, and as this being was drilling this into me, I responded as a good student, and I said, yes, I am Shiva. I am Shiva incarnate. I am, and I started repeating back all of these grandiose things this being was saying. And it was very empowering and expanding and frightening and shocking and traumatic and blissful and all of these things wrapped into one. And that went on for a while. And so I started saying, what does that mean? What does that mean? How do I embody that as I'm walking around in the grocery store, either, full of judgment over somebody or full of lust over somebody else. How do I have all these human, overwhelming emotional experiences and incorporate that? What do I do with that? And so I'm here to tell you 9 months later, that process is the shift to 5D. That is the process. There are other things I'm still not ready. I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready to share. I may never share. And again, because I have to be convinced, I have to be convinced that it's helpful. And I'm not convinced that it's helpful. And I may be wrong about that, but there's some things I won't share just because it sounds too grandiose. And I don't like the idea of separating myself from other people. I don't like that. So I will continue to struggle with that, even though I think they're telling me I need to share more. I'll share one thing with you because I've come to accept it with time, and it has proven to be, there's proven to be some truth, and I'm open to multiple understandings of this. So that allows me to share this, so I will. At one point, I can't remember when, but at one point, I was being told all these grandiose things, which I'm not ready to share with you. But at one point, one of those teachers left and another teacher came. And this was a feminine being. So, femininity, the feminine has a different tactic than the masculine. I know because I'm a masculine teacher, so I tend to beat people over the head. I bludgeon people with powerful things, and not everybody can handle that. And I just accept that's the kind of teacher that I am. But this feminine teacher showed up and she said, how would you feel about being the sole, how did she put it? How would you feel about being the person who was solely responsible for bringing the 5D shift to Earth? And because it was put to me as a question, my ego didn't get stimulated, and I said, well, that would be fucking awesome. I would love that. And she said, good, because you are. If you don't do it, it won't happen. And that was challenging for me to hear. It's still challenging for me to hear. It brings up a lot of emotions. But to back that up and to give you some history on that, again, let me be clear. I'm open to different alternative, multiple explanations for that. But I was definitely given the feeling that I had to believe it literally. That this was literal and that I needed to accept this literally. And of course, this was hard on my ego. And so early on, backing up early on, those of you, if you remember, one of the first, you can go back and do this. If you spend the time and look for it, you can find it. It's on the free channel. But I did a live interdimensional meditation where I guided us into the sun. And from the sun, we sent waves of love to the earth. And that was, I think, one of the first interdimensional meditations I'd ever guided. And when I did that, it was such a powerful experience, I had to take a couple of days off. Looking back on it, what was challenging was that my 3D understanding had been expanded beyond its boundaries, and that my body took that as I'm tired, I need to rest. Truth is, I was just fine, but my ego and my intellect had, it broke my intellect a little bit. So I wasn't expecting it to be that powerful. But as soon as I finished that live stream, if you go back and watch it, you'll see the moment that I ended the live stream and I hit stop streaming, there was a chorus of beings. I don't even know how many. It felt like thousands, millions. And they all just descended on me and said, "Thank you so much." And they went on, and they were all saying that. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what you've just done. We can't do this without you." And so, that was a pleasant experience. I won't lie to you. I do these things as much for those pleasant experiences as I do for the, just the desire to shift and change the earth, because I care. And sorry, this is very, very emotional for me. So I did that meditation, a lot. I still do it because, I love the idea of making those beings so happy. It makes me happy to know that. And of course, I love, the positive reinforcement. Who wouldn't? And not to mention the intense power that I feel. I feel such intense, high intense energy flowing through me when I do it. So for all of those reasons, I keep doing it. Sometimes if nothing's happening, I'll just go do that. And it almost always works. So one day I did that, and I went back and I went into the sun, and I was talking to the sun, and there were other beings there, and I started doing the same thing. And the meditation started with a being who said, "Follow me, I want to show you something." So I followed, I think it was a feminine being. I followed her into the sun. And we went into the center of the sun, which is, I experience it as this very bright white light vortex that is actually a portal to higher dimensions in the center of the sun. And she said, "What you did that day, that is, you actually started the solar flash. That's what started it." She said, "You did that. You need to understand what you just did. You've been hearing about this. You just created it. What you did, however many days ago. That's going to take some time. And when it does, when it hits, I want you to remember that you're the one that did it." And so what I've learned to do, and I did during this meditation, what I've learned to do with all of these meditations, starting from the "You are Shiva incarnate," that was so traumatic for my brain. I mean, that was so hard. I thought I was losing my mind. And I really struggled thinking, I'm losing my mind. I'm becoming delusional. I must have a tumor in my brain. Something like that. So in order to save my sanity, I came up with a strategy which I teach you guys to do, which is whatever they tell me, I take it at face value. I repeat it back to them, no matter how unbelievable it is. And I haven't even scratched the surface at some of the stuff they've told me. But whatever it is, I now know for my own sanity, just to keep my own physical sanity, I repeat back to them and I say, "Yes, thank you. I am," whatever they've said. "Yes, thank you. I am the sole person responsible for the 5D shift. Thank you. I am that important. Thank you. I am that amazing." And I repeat back to them verbatim whatever they say, because if I hang on to it, imagine what's happening is that me struggling with it is they're handing me a 5-dimensional football and I'm trying to hang on to it with 3-dimensional hands. It's sort of like, what happened to if you watch the Marvel movies, what happened to Iron Man when he snapped his fingers with Thanos's glove. If they give me something like that and there's power behind it and I start to struggle with it, I start to come apart at the seams. I start disintegrating. It's very bad. So I've learned to just say, yes, I am, and I take whatever they tell me at face value. And then as soon as I come back into 3D, of course, I remember it and I still accept it at face value. And then I don't get attached to it. Meaning I just go on with my normal 3D life like nothing's changed, and I just don't mess with it. I don't have to figure it out. It doesn't have to be true or not true. That's what they told me, and it's true. I don't quite understand how it manifests, but I don't need to understand. That's just the way it is. And when I do that, I expand. So I did that with this. And then the 23rd of this month. As you know, that's when we had the big solar storm, so much so that we saw all of the, the northern lights had made their way, down into the lower 48. You remember that? So after the 23rd, and again, this is not easy for my false humility. I'm not comfortable sharing this, but I think I need to because I think it's helpful for all of you because you'll go through similar experiences. Everybody will go through their own version of this. And when all of that was going on in meditation, again, another one of these feminine beings showed up and said, "You did that. Remember that meditation you did?" She said, "That is the result of your meditation in the sun. You did that. You're responsible for that." So what is the point of all of that, you might ask? Again, it's not about me bragging. I have no interest in that. I have zero interest in that. It's about you understanding how powerful you are. And the only thing separating you from that power is your decision to accept it. Now, remember, all of the things I've been teaching now all make sense. I now understand the shamanic secret commandment to a perfect life, all of the Qigong, everything I've been teaching makes perfect sense. I totally get it. And at the time I didn't really know. I needed to make a living. So I started creating things and selling it so that I could pay the bills. Now that it's all done, I realize this was part of the plan from the beginning. What was I saying? What is important for you to understand is that your decision to accept that truth must be followed by action. The action is what brings it into reality. I'm going to back up a little bit. So the male being, the extremely powerful male being comes and says, "You are a probability." And then comes and says, "You are Shiva incarnate." He said multiple other things I'm not prepared to tell you because I don't think it helps anybody. And I struggled with it, and I struggled with my sanity, and I struggled with it so much so that, as you remember, you guys, I gave myself frozen shoulder. I ended up injuring myself physically from the amount of stress because I thought I was going crazy, and my ego couldn't tolerate it. My false humility couldn't tolerate it. My desire to be human couldn't tolerate it. And I ended up harming myself. So after I began to heal from that, the being came back one day. And for the first time, he was harsh with me in the way that I can be harsh with my students. He came back and he said, "You have to believe what we're telling you about yourself. You've got to believe it. It's very important that you believe what you're being told." And so because I understand that kind of chastising from a teacher, I said, "Yes, sir." And I started working to accept it and not get attached to it. And I started doing the meditations and I was seeking the power. So the interdimensional meditations began shifting from me waiting for them to come and show up in my bedroom and doing energy work on me, or giving me these messages, or giving me these interdimensional, energy jolts. It went from that to, they started saying, "Come on with us, let me show you something." And they would take me to different dimensions where I was doing different things. I'll share another one with you, even though it's incredibly grandiose. I don't know, it doesn't bother me that much, I guess because it feels like it's somewhere else. And one time, I was working with these three beings, these three feminine Shaktis, goddesses. In fact, they called themselves goddesses. And they said, "We want to show you something." And they took me, I'm having a hard time keeping my emotions in check here. They took me through this wormhole. I wish I could explain what that feels like. But it feels like you're going through like multiple G's. So this wormhole that's spinning and twirling and everything like that. And we come out this other side, and I'm in this beautiful world that has it looks like it's this calm lake. And it's got these mystical sort of blue colors, sort of like the colors you see in this JPEG that I'm using here, that you're looking at. And there's this mountain that comes out of the water, and at the top of this mountain is this light that's shining, and it's like shining through to all the other dimensions, and it's really beautiful to look at. And they said, "We come here." They said, "This is the realm of inspiration," they called it. And they said, "We come here because of the inspiration that this light gives us. It inspires us to create." And then they said, "That's you." They said, "We come here to worship you. You don't realize that on this level of reality, you provide inspiration for the rest of the multiverse. The multiverse wouldn't be able to create if it wasn't for you. You are our God. We worship you." Now, again, I've learned to accept things at face value and not get attached to them. Again, I feel some distance because that's through a wormhole on another side of somewhere, so it's easier for me to go, "Oh yeah, that's me on another level." But I started thinking about that, and by extension, because you guys should understand, I think about you guys all the time. No matter what I'm doing, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, my first thought is, how can I teach this to my students? How can I share this with the world? And so after that experience, as always, my brain goes to, how can this benefit my students? And I started to realize, again, I started to see myself, I started to believe. As time goes on, I'm starting to believe what these beings are telling me. And the only thing that that's done for me in terms of my relationship to other people is that when I'm walking around and I see a person, I go, that is some major badass god that's taking a vacation here and just looks like an old lady, or looks like a little kid, or looks like a surfer, or looks like a really hot, girl in a bikini. But underneath that avatar, underneath that is an unbelievably powerful deity beyond my comprehension. And if they understood how powerful they were, how amazing, how beautiful they are, if they understood that the only people who get to 3D are these unbelievably powerful infinite gods that the gods themselves worship. So everybody listening to me, if you are somebody that I would say who has a victim mentality, you're full of pain, you're full of depression, you're full of self-degradation, you believe that evil archons are out to destroy you, or that beings of light want to lie to you, you believe that the universe is a cold, cruel place. If you believe that, it's almost comical. Because I know for a fact, if you've made it to 3D, you are one serious fucking badass in higher dimensions. If you made it here, you are the most powerful, the most amazing of all of the gods that ever existed. Because those are the only people that get here. And that's you. If that doesn't empower you to drop your victim mentality, I don't know what else will. But in order to achieve it, in order to embody it, you must take action on it. So the way to do that, besides taking all of the actions that I teach you guys to take, is when you do your interdimensional meditations, start letting those beings take you to who you really are. And be prepared to have a perhaps traumatizing experience, because it'll be very traumatizing to your 3D avatar. So that's the main message that I want to share with you guys. And it is a choice. 3D, don't wait around for 5D to happen to you. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. I keep hearing people, as a teacher, most of the time, the majority of what I hear are excuses. People who are making excuses for why they can't take action towards their greatest happiness. I'm now living, I wish I could show you, but I'm living in this tree house. It's this house perched on the side of a mountain, surrounded by trees and overlooking the ocean. I can walk down to the ocean if I want. It's like this castle, and I'm surrounded by jungle. And and I've been surfing the best waves of my life, every day for the past 2 weeks. I'm living my absolute fantasy, and that only happened because I went and spent money I didn't have. And I took a risk. I once again jumped off the cliff. I went and spent thousands of dollars I didn't have on surfboards that I needed. And when I did that, I showed up here and this house presented itself, and I'm paying the same amount that I would pay for a studio apartment somewhere in Southern California, and I'm living in this 3-bedroom, castle in the forest overlooking, the rainforest and the ocean. And the only reason that that showed up is because I took action. And so, I'm trying to not out anybody here, but, recently somebody made an excuse. They said, I want to do this. And I said, why don't you go do it? And they gave me some excuses about why they can't live their life. And the only thing I think is, the only reason that guy doesn't have what he wants is because he just won't go and take it. But you have to drop the idea that you have to first feel worthy, you have to have enough money, you have to be free of illness, you have to have achieved enlightenment, you have to be completely full of self-confidence. Those are all the program that your 3D avatar has in order to play the game. It's not you. You aren't those things. If you were to just accept the fact that you are an amazing being that the universe cannot function without, and that other beings worship, beings that we look upon as gods worship you because of your amazingness, and they are so filled with gratitude and love and respect and awe that you came to this most difficult of planets and you're slugging through and you're surviving. If you could just allow yourself to be seen the way they see you, and then just take the actions that that being would take. I say to myself a lot of times, well, if I'm Shiva incarnate, what would Shiva do? Well, Shiva sure as hell wouldn't wait around for his tax refund. He would go and buy whatever the hell he wanted and just assume that the universe would give him what he needed. I mean, he's Shiva. He doesn't need to prove anything. He can do whatever the hell he wants. So I do that. It doesn't mean that I feel like I can do it. It doesn't mean that I feel worthy. It doesn't mean that I feel confident. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means that I take what I've been told at face value and I act on that and that alone. And if you can do that, you will begin to shift. When you do interdimensional meditation, and whenever a being comes to you, you respond with yes and thank you. When you start to have this fantasy in your head, and by the way, whenever the fantasy comes, it's never going to be negative. So if you're trying to do interdimensional meditation and you believe you're being told you're a piece of crap, or that you're trying to tell you to go do something destructive, that's not an extraterrestrial being, that's your own head. How can you tell the difference between your own head and an extraterrestrial being? An extraterrestrial being will only tell you good things about yourself. Will never tell you anything, because remember, from their perspective, you're beyond perfect. They're never going to come to you and tell you the obvious 3D truth. Oh my God, you're a 60-year-old balding man. Who the hell do you think you are, thinking you can go surfing every day for the rest of your life? Your body won't be able to handle it. They don't come and tell me that. They come and tell me you're Shiva. You have to believe this. They come and tell me that the meditation that I did 3 months ago is what is creating this solar wave. That's what they tell me. So I act based on that. So that means now when I go into interdimensional meditations, I got a fire under my saddle. And I go out there to specifically create the solar flash, specifically to shift the world up, specifically to wake up everybody, specifically to go and send high voltage, jolts of love to the elite, so that they will drop to their knees and lose all of their power because the love is so overwhelming. That's what I do. I now, when I'm doing interdimensional meditation, I'm doing exactly what they're telling me I am. And the power that I feel in those meditations is unbelievable. And then what has happened to me is that when this first wave hit, something shifted in me physically. It started on the full moon before the 23rd. Was it the full moon? This last full moon that we had, that my body started shifting. And again, the surfing is the thing. I go out there and I go surfing for 2 hours, whatever it is, and I come back and I'm a little tired and stiff. And then a few hours later, I'm back to normal again, which is completely unheard of. My body has never recovered that fast in my life. So I can only assume that these interdimensional meditations are actually shifting my DNA. So, I think I've kind of run out of things to say. I pretty much said everything. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. If you have a question, please write the word question in all caps, and I will answer it. If you have a feeling, write the word honest feeling, and I will share that as well. All right, let's take a look here. Zerlath Immortal, honest feeling. I feel like a D&D character I made long ago. He was a bard, warrior, dragon man. Awesome. Jade Hathaway says, I feel like I'm a character from Twilight, half werewolf, half vampire in half, which I feel like I'm a tribrid, powerful to do something. Let me just be clear. There is no rules here. I have personal experience that there are beings that, there are mantis beings. Like there are 7-foot tall beings who look just like mantises. Those are one of the most powerful ETs there are. There are cat beings. So imagine going to one of these, one of these cosplay things and somebody dressed up as a cat walking around. Those exist. Those beings exist. There are nagas. Nagas are cobra beings that can shapeshift into human form. Who knows what else they can shapeshift into, but they definitely shapeshift between human and giant cobras. And then there are all other kinds of beings you can imagine. We've got Bigfoot. Bigfoot, I don't know if they're an extraterrestrial or not. They're not. They've got to be from Earth, but they are higher dimensional beings, and you can summon Bigfoot and communicate with Bigfoot just like an ET. I know because I did it. I didn't even know I was doing it. I meditated. This was way back in 2012. And I meditated on meeting a Sasquatch, and I went out deep into the forest, and sure enough, one showed up, and he was a multi-dimensional being. It was the most frightening experience of my life. So you're experiencing yourself as I don't know about the vampire thing. I mean, I hope that you're not sucking the blood out of people. That's not something we would want. But werewolf, we already know that there are these beings called the dog man. And these are beings from another dimension as well. And they sometimes end up in the third dimension. This is real. All of this stuff is real. Anything you can imagine. There's probably, unicorns probably do exist on some dimensional level. So I recommend that you allow yourself to experience it, but don't just have your own imagination about it. Because here's the thing, you know, half werewolf, half vampire. You don't know if that's your own 3D fantasy or if that's who you are in a higher dimension. So you can hang on to that, but I would also do the interdimensional meditation and see what you really are. Maybe you are that, maybe you're not. Maybe you're something altogether different. But it is important to understand that there are people who are still coming from their fear and their ego, and they can fool themselves with their own, you know, fantasies. And so this is why you have to know how to tell the difference. But one of the main things is whenever you're having an interaction with a higher dimensional being, they will never, ever say anything negative to you or critical, ever. And, this is also very important, they will never say anything critical about anybody else. Even if you ask them about Hitler, they will never say anything critical. They will say, at best, they'll say, well, that person doesn't understand this, or that person is trying to understand this. Because even Hitler is a higher dimensional being beyond your wildest dreams. He played an avatar. He played a bad guy. And he did some very destructive things. But no human being, no matter who they are, is anything less than an unbelievably infinite, expansive being. And the only thing that matters is about you. That is true about you, first and foremost. When you start doing this, you might start to interact with people who have passed away. And when you talk to the soul of somebody that's passed away who might have been very limited and abusive in their physical life, you'll find out that their spirit is not that way at all. So that's another important part of healing, that whatever abuse you've suffered, you know, whoever's hurt your feelings, you know, you'll have to at some point be able to see them for who they really are. Otherwise you won't shift. Your shift depends on your ability to see other people as who they are. So, when these beings talk to you, they will always give you compliments. They will never, ever, ever criticize you. Even if even if you do horrible things, they will never criticize you for that. And they will never criticize anybody else. So if you think you're hearing from a higher dimensional being and that being is talking shit about somebody else, that's you. That's not them. Okay, what else? Erdwick, question. Does the earth element near graveyards behave differently in energy? So Erdwick, you're conflating different things here. The earth element is the earth element. So the earth element near graveyards is just being the earth element. Here's what I gather from your question and from your name. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to make a guess that you've done a lot of Western magic. Whether that be higher Western magic or whether that be Wicca or something like that. Because their understanding of the elements is not entirely the same, I would say inaccurate. And why you're talking about graveyards, again, people think that ghosts, let me talk about ghosts for a second. You haven't mentioned ghosts. So I'm not saying this about you, but it's making me think about it. Let me mention ghosts for a second. Ghosts are not the souls of the departed. Ghosts are the inner program, the lower self, the unconscious programming of somebody who's passed away. So your unconscious has a consciousness as well. It's not you. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to live in such a way where your lower self worships your higher consciousness, which is the symbolism of that in the like the Lord of the Rings books is when the dwarves are at war with the elves, you know, that's going on until they actually meet an elf, and then the elves are the most amazing thing. Like, you know, that one dwarf who, you know, the most powerful thing in the world for him was when he ended up getting a lock of hair of the elf queen. But before that, he was at war with them. So the idea is to get your unconscious mind to submit to your higher consciousness. And that, when that happens, you don't create a ghost. You create a ghost when you are fractured and you die in a fractured state. And then your unconscious gets squished out onto the earth plane and it runs around and says, my name is, you know, Redbeard, or, you know, whatever. And it's not. The soul of that person has moved on. So there's nothing spiritual about graveyards. And, you know, the only thing that graveyards teach you, like for the, some of the tantrics who, you know, dwell in graveyards, is to disconnect you from your 3D avatar and to realize that your human life, the only thing that's going to happen is that you're physically going to die. Your personality will die. But even then, those tantrics move past that and they don't live in graveyards. So I don't know why you're asking that question. You have an agenda behind that question. It's not like, you know, you want to know. You kind of probably already think this way and you want me to co-sign this pseudo-spiritual idea that graveyard earth, you know, blah, blah, blah. Don't waste your time. Ghosts are the homeless of the spiritual realm. Hanging out with ghosts is like hanging out with homeless drug addicts. The level of energy they have is really bad. And there's just nothing to be accomplished by graveyards or any of that stuff. Unless you go there and you meditate on the transientness of your 3D avatar. Other than that, there's nothing to be gained. It's like hanging out, you know, in a swamp. You know, it's just energy that's pulling things down into the ground. It's gobbling things up. It's not meant for human consumption. Anyway, I don't know that I answered your question or not. A real question, anyway, thank you for your question. Maclovio has just thrown $2 at me. Thank you very much. I appreciate the support. Afterman 316 question. Greetings in space, Mahadeva. When we perform celestial qigong in pitch dark, our hands start to glow after a session. You're asking me? What are you asking me for? Sounds like you've already had that experience. So you have the answer to that. If you're telling me that your hands glow when you do celestial qigong in the dark, I believe you. In fact, I would completely believe that for all kinds of reasons. So I'm glad that your practice is working that well for you. Congratulations. Anybody else, by the way, if you want to have that kind of experience that he's talking about, you can go to Celestial. I'll just write it in here. You can go to celestialqigong.com and you can get it yourself. You can also go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe to the Warrior 90-day lightning qigong, because celestial qigong is the earlier form of lightning qigong, and you can try and have that same experience if you want. See if you can get that to happen for you. Let's see what else. Erdwick says, no, I'm a Hindu Shakta. So welcome to the channel. I'm glad. So it sounds like you're, you've got your own practice. I hope you're gaining something from this channel. It makes me want to ask you, why aren't you doing at least some of the free practices that I have on here? Because listen, it's kind of disrespectful and distracting for you to come in and talk about some other practice. So if you're wanting to talk about, tantric practice in the smashan, I don't teach that. Of course, I appreciate it and I respect it, but I don't teach it. So you're really kind of detracting and bringing attention to yourself. It's sort of like asking a question in class that just brings attention to you. I appreciate and understand the question, but I want to expand you beyond wherever you are. And of course, I have an agenda. I want you to do my practices, even if it's the newer stuff, the free stuff. If you ask me about stuff that I teach, I'm going to be really excited. If you're not asking me about stuff I teach, I'm going to know it. I'm going to feel it. And so I tend to respond kind of, I don't want to say negatively, but I can tell when somebody has an agenda. When they're not really asking me an honest question, like you want to know something that you think I know that you don't, as opposed to wanting me to co-sign some other non-associated ego thing that you've got going on. And in that I say, teach your own classes. Go and make your own videos. Start talking about how the earth element works in graveyards, because I don't talk about that. Of course, everybody here is welcome, but again, you're going to get a better response from me if you ask me about stuff I teach. So let's see, what else? Timothy Zoll, honest experience. When doing Qigong, my hands can be seen through my eyelids. That's pretty awesome. Erdwick, I do free practices and do your paid content too. You asked about the Taoist perspective. So I was wrong, and when I'm wrong, I admit it. It felt like you were coming from, but then I don't know why you responded that way. Why did you respond saying you're a Hindu Shakta? I guess you can, but I don't know from that you're doing my practices. So it doesn't help me to best interact with you. So you and I need to work on our communication together. Since you're the one writing the questions, the responsibility's on you. This is it's what my therapist would call good contact functioning. So good contact functioning, when you reach out to interact with somebody, make sure that you're interacting with them on their level as opposed to coming from your ego, from your thing, which is understandable. It's bad contact functioning for me not to know that you're one of my students and you practice this and that. It doesn't help me to bond with you. So let's work on that. Let's see what else. So you're coming from the Taoist perspective. The Taoist perspective, like if you had asked me what is the spirit fighting perspective on what do you call it? What is the spirit fighting perspective on graveyards? That I can answer. So in case you want to know, I'll put down the link here. It's maoshan.thunderwizard.com. I don't talk about it as much, but the five element Maoshan spirit fighting practices, those come from a very esoteric Maoshan sect. And what they would do to gain energy is they would go to graveyards and they would do these forms. Now, I don't recommend anybody does this. You should only do this under the supervision of a master. And I wouldn't even put myself in that category. I wouldn't do this. But if somebody wanted to master the spirit fighting, they would go to a graveyard and they would start doing these practices. Now, the vibration of that energy is going to attract negative entities, ghosts, demons, things like that. It's going to attract them not because they like the energy, but because they don't like it. And you're in their turf. And so when you do these practices, it makes them uncomfortable. So they're going to want to fight you. Now, since it's their turf, they're not going to want to run away. So they're going to want to drive you out. And so what will happen is they will try and get into your energy while you're doing these movements. And what will happen is you'll end up actually taking their energy from them. And so it's kind of reverse. It's kind of the reverse of what negative beings do to humans. They steal your energy. And one of the ways that you know that you're fighting a negative entity is when you do the practices, you start to get really tired, like out of nowhere. You just get really tired or really sleepy, or you start to feel like sad. And then what you do is you relax, completely physically relax, and then do the practices even more. And let your anger or your fear or whatever it is come to the surface. And let that energy come out your hands. And then what will end up happening is that if that negative entity doesn't run for the hills, you will end up destroying it. And you'll end up taking their energy. And so this is what the Maoshan masters used to do. So, but that has nothing to do with whether the earth element is different. I mean, the earth element is the earth element. Anyway, so now that I understand your question a little better, that's my response from my experience. Mershgong question, anything for remembering past lives? So Mershgong, welcome to the channel. I care about you more than anything else. And what I want for you, Mershgang, is I want you to expand and to grow. That includes you intellectually, spiritually, and everything else. So laziness does not serve you. And this question is incredibly lazy. Maybe you're on your phone and this is the normal thing now. People, emojis this, 2 letters for that. But you have this intellect that can serve you. So write out a full question. So that's my first response to you, is that be kind to yourself, respect yourself enough to write out a full question with a subject, an object, a verb, good punctuation and spelling. That shows respect for yourself. It's like, if you're going to go to a party, don't show up in, shit-stained underwear. It's just disrespectful to yourself. You dress up, right? You want to show up and look good. So do that when you ask me a question. Next thing is, show me the respect of writing out a full question so that I can understand what the hell you're asking me. Third is ask a question, like a specific question. If I have to now look at your question and try to interpret what you're trying to ask me. You say anything for remembering past life, '(S). And I have to now go, okay, what the hell is this guy asking me? He's trying to ask me, can I tell him anything about how he can remember his past life? So now that I've gone through all of that mental gymnastics because of your self-deprecation and your lack of respect for me and the rest of my class, my answer to you is do the practices that I'm teaching you. Put some time into it. Even if you're doing the Hul breath or the Huar breath, do some of the exercises I'm teaching. Get connected to your energy. The first thing before you can even begin to remember your past life is you've got to know your present life. So you've got to know all of the negative self-talk and all of the negative programming in your life now. Because if you just remember your past life, more than likely it's going to bring up some trauma, but it's not necessarily going to help you live beyond your limitations now. But what can help you now is if you are able to energetically face yourself and take responsibility. For instance, if you are my student, I would sit you down and I would ask you, why are you interacting with me like this? Why did it not? I mean, you did one thing right. You asked the word question in all caps. So good news for that. You followed my request to the letter. But the rest of it, I want to know, why are you so lazy with the rest of it? And why aren't you telling me why? Because there's a reason why you're asking me about a past life. I don't know what that is. I can't help you if you don't let me know what the emotional need is behind that. So for example, if you came to me and said, I want to know about my past lives because I want to get out of this rut I'm in, or I want to be more successful, or something like that, that would give me an understanding of how to best help you. But to throw out that general question, I could go on forever talking generally and nobody gets help. But I'll tell you who those kinds of questions work well for. They work well for teachers who are full of themselves. Teachers who are full of and proud of their knowledge. Because if I was all about you listening to me and my knowledge and you asked that, then I would start going off about past life this and past life that and remembering past life. And I wouldn't be addressing your question or helping you. And I want to help you. So in order to do that, you've got to share your emotional reason for asking me, which means you have to be vulnerable, and then you're going to write out a full question. Got it? So to answer your question, what I can give you, you want me to throw crumbs at you for remembering your past life? Do some energy work and some meditation. Do as much as you can get your hands on. That will help you remember your past lives. All right. I don't see any other questions. We've been talking, I've been on for a long time, I guess. So we'll leave it at that. I'm starting to feel hungry. And anyway, I'm glad you guys showed up. So, and thank you for listening to me talk about some of that very vulnerable stuff early on. Hopefully it was helpful. And I hope that you are able to apply this to yourself to see what kind of a being you are. I recommend that everybody go to, now I'm going to go to the crappy live thing here because I want to point to things here. So I don't know if you can see me or not, but go up here to thunderwizard.com and subscribe for the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. For those of you that want to proactively be a part of your shift to 5D, I am offering the 6-phase ascension process to 5D. And in order to experience that, you would go to thunderwizard.com. You would subscribe to the 6-month Ascension Apprenticeship Program. And there's only a few slots available. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. If you have one session with me and you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. But it's a 6-month concentrated apprenticeship where we're just going to focus on you experiencing what I've been experiencing, of course, in your own specific setup. Let's see, anything else? Go to all of my books can be found on the bottom here. If you look at the bottom, I'm not even going to bother pointing because the picture's all crappy. You can go to audiobooks.thunderwizard.com and look for my books. And if you're in someplace outside of the U.S., click at the top where it'll say, take you to the U.S. site. Click on that so you can see all of my stuff. And after this, again, we're going to go back. I'm going to put the Huar breath on 24/7. Play that in the background while you're doing mundane things. You can meditate to it. You can chant along with it. You can play it as you sleep, whatever. But the more, as I've been told, that mantra and the meditation on that mantra is the thing that is bringing the 5D solar flash. According to my guides, that's what they told me. You can believe it or not believe it, but that's just what they've said. So I'm willing to accept it. And I know that at the very least, the more that I do this stuff, the happier I am. So it will benefit you as well. It won't cost you a dime. And you may very well be saving the world. All right, that's it, my friends. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for showing up. I love you. If I've offended anybody, please forgive me. It's all been done in an attempt to be helpful. And I am still in the process of shifting, so maybe one day I'll